Again, welcome to our MDC Wild Webcast on Strange But True, where we're talking about some strange but true Missouri animal and plant facts. And I am Joe Jarrick. I'm your Wild Webcast host. And with us today is Sarah Easton. Sarah is the naturalist at our Runge Nature Center here in Jefferson City. You may remember her from our winter webcast on Strange But True Winter Survival. Now we're coming back to talk about some summer critters and plants. So thanks for coming back, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I'm glad to be back and glad to be staying strange.
That's right. So again, folks, let us know if you could see and hear. And our Strange But True facts are taken from our Strange But True booklet that we put together based on our Xplor Kids magazine features. So you can get this super cool 136-page full color book at our online nature shop at mdcnatureshop.com. You can also pick it up at our nature centers around the state for $8.95. It makes a great gift. So let's jump into some strange but true info. If you want some more information on Missouri plants and animals, you can check out our online field guide at mdc.mo.gov and then search field guide. So we'll be using some information from that. And again, we'll take your questions throughout the time we have. So use the chat box on the right side of your screen and let's get into it. So toads. Toads are pretty cool and misunderstood. So the American toads inflate their bodies like warty balloons to look bigger and make it tougher for snakes and some other predators to swallow them. So you got a frog in your throat? Nope, it's a toad. Also, toads are kind of weird and strange in the fact that no, a toad's skin won't give you warts, but it can ooze a poison. And the poison isn't strong enough to hurt people, but if a dog or cat chews on a toad, the toxin will make them sick. So some strange but true stuff, Sarah.
Yeah, so toads are pretty crazy creatures. I wanted to include, when we were preparing this, I really wanted to include toads because for me they're such a summer staple animal. It's very common for you to find a toad, on your driveway or around your house
in your garden.
In the summer, in your garden, in the summer. And like you said, they're a little bit misunderstood. These kind of strange facts are both defense mechanisms for the toad, right? If you've ever tried to catch that toad that was around your house or in your garden, they're not the fastest animals.
Right, they're very similar to frogs, but there are some key differences. What are those?
Yeah, so besides the habitat that you would find them in, our toads are going to be much more terrestrial, meaning on land, where frogs will be near to water, found much more around water. Another big difference is those hind legs. Frogs are known for those really powerful hind legs, able to make huge leaps at a time, and our toads have those.
You kind of hop along.
Squat little legs, and they just hop a little bit at a time. So a little bit harder to get away from predators. And because of that, they have these kind of crazy defense mechanisms, either inflating to make it hard for them to be swallowed, or oozing that toxin, which will not give you warts.
It will not give you warts. But again, your cat and dog, if it eats it, it can make it sick. And if you're handling a toad, like we encourage whenever you're handling wildlife, wear gloves and or wash your hands after, because that toxin, you don't want to kind of touch your eyes or face or mouth or anything. So wash your hands. In the American toad, it's found where in the state?
Mostly, all over the state. We have about 6 species of toads that can be found in Missouri, but our American toad is going to be the most common for sure. The most likely one that you'd see around your house or in your garden, that kind of thing.
Right. And as we could see here, part of the toad's coloring is camouflage. So in a lot of situations, we may not see the toad, but we'll hear it. So what's that sound like?
Yeah, so if you're out on a summer evening and you hear something that sounds like this, that's our American toad.
And so, folks, unfortunately, we do not have like crates of animals here. The sounds you'll be hearing, that's from some technology we have, some audible stuff where we can play different sounds from different critters. So again, let's play that again.
One more time for the toad.
So you might not see him, but during summertime, you can listen for him, and that's what they sound like.
Yeah, that really high-pitched trill is going to be your American toad.
Cool. And another cool critter that we very much may not see, but will hear, is the eastern whippoorwill. Now, the eastern whippoorwill, they're hard to see because they're very well camouflaged, but they're easy to hear. So especially on moonlit nights during the mating season, the camouflaged big-mouthed birds, they belt out their name through their song where they kind of go whippoorwill, whippoorwill, up to 60 times a minute. And that could be more than 1,000 times without stopping. So Sarah has that sound too.
You did an excellent job of making it, but it might sound a little bit like this too.
And it sounds like, oh, whippoorwill, whippoorwill.
Yeah, if you kind of, tilt your head to the side and close one eye, it kind of, you can work out whippoorwill in there.
Yeah. And again, we said you'll hear them more than see them because they're incredibly well camouflaged. They are in what, forests and areas like that? Where do they nest?
Yeah, they
nest.
they prefer kind of forested areas with open kind of understory. And
a lot of leaf litter on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. They need a lot of leaf litter because they are ground nesting birds. So kind of like you can see in that illustration there. That's about what it would look like if they were on a nest. They just kind of lay their eggs in the leaf litter.
They don't really build a nest, so what's convenient, and they camouflage so well that you can't see them. So they don't even build a nest. Are they bad parents?
You might have the tendency to think like, oh, they're just leaving their eggs on the ground. But this next fact makes me appreciate them as parents so much more.
So the eastern whippoorwills, they time their egg laying so that their chicks hatch about 10 days before a full moon. And as the moon gets brighter each night, the parents are then able to hunt longer and catch more insects to feed their growing chicks. So they're night hunters.
Yes, they are. They're nocturnal birds, which is kind of unique in and of itself. But they still hunt by sight, which a lot of nocturnal animals will use other senses for hunting because it's hard to see at night. But our whippoorwills are still using their sight, so they need that extra moonlight to be able to catch those extra insects to feed their growing chicks.
Very cool. And we have some pictures here. Now they're found throughout the entire state.
Yeah, they historically were found throughout the state in areas where that habitat, like we mentioned,
that open forest, open woodland with leaf litter on the ground.
Right. Anywhere that habitat was found across the state, you could probably find a whippoorwill. However, that habitat is getting harder and harder for them to find. And people are really noticing that. We get a lot of inquiries at the nature center like, hey, why am I not hearing these whippoorwills as much anymore? So they are an animal that is dealing with habitat loss.
Right. So again, we encourage, 93% of Missouri land is privately owned. So if you own some land, we encourage you to really build up habitat for wildlife. And again, folks, we could help you with that. Visit our website at mdc.mo.gov and look up, improving your property or helping wildlife. So again, a pretty cool, strange creature. And again, let's listen to that again.
Yeah, one more summer sound.
That's what you're going to listen for. And kind of as we talk about, animals and insects working together or being part of that same food chain and stuff, let's look at the yucca plant and the yucca moth. So here in Missouri, we have both, and neither the yucca moth or the yucca plants could actually survive without each other. So baby yucca moths eat only the seeds from the spiky plants. And then the yucca flowers, which make the seeds, can only be pollinated by these tiny white moths. So what do they call that?
Yeah, so this is an example of a mutualistic relationship where two species are interacting and they both gain something from it. Like you mentioned, the plant can't produce fruits without the moth, and then the moth needs those seeds to eat for their young. So they depend on each other, and it's really a crazy relationship. The female moth will actually take pollen from one flower and purposely move it to the other to fertilize the flower, and once she has done that, then she'll lay her eggs. So she makes sure that there's going to be seeds in that plant before she'll lay her eggs.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. Somebody asked, now, are yuccas native to Missouri? We kind of think of them as like Southwest kind of flower.
Yeah, good question. So in Missouri, we have 3 species of yucca that can be found. The Spanish bayonet or the Adam's needle is the one you're probably most familiar with. That's probably the most prevalent one. And it actually is not native, although you can now find it across the state. It has kind of escaped from cultivation, as we say.
And those are kind of the spiky ones where they send up that really like 4-foot tall spike flower in the center. People have them in their yards and gardens a lot.
Yes.
So that's the one we're most familiar with, but we have 2 native species.
2 native species, one called a soapweed yucca, and that's found really only in the extreme kind of northwestern corner of the state. And then the Arkansas yucca, which, as the name implies, is kind of found down in the southern Ozarks around the Arkansas border.
Okay, and then yucca, as we look at the plant itself, I mean, there's some like practical use for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're an amazing plant and historically have been used for a lot of different things. Soap making, as that name kind of applied on that.
Touch the leaves up and they create kind of a detergent almost.
Yeah, cordage, you can just see from that picture that there's a lot of kind of stringy fiber, so making cordage or brooms. And then they have historically had some medicinal properties as well.
Okay, interesting. So then the Yucca Moth, they're tiny. That one is on a fingertip. So that helps us understand just how tiny they are. And then are those the even tinier caterpillars?
Yeah, so they're extremely small, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because they have to be able to get into those yucca flowers, and they're kind of that creamy white color like you can see on there, which is also the color of the flower, so that helps them camouflage there.
Strange but true fact about the adult yucca moths too, they don't even eat.
Nope, they do not. And actually many moths do not eat as adults because they don't really live very long in that adult stage. But they make up for it by shoveling in as much food as they can when they're a caterpillar.
Fascinating. So as we look at the yucca moth, let's talk about something that eats moths. So as we look on, we have our little brown bat, that's a native species of bat, and holy in-flight meal, Batman, the little brown mitoses, or bats, folks, for us everyday folks, they're little brown bat, and they use their wings and tails like catcher's mitts to bag bugs when they fly. That is so cool. So they literally catch them with their legs and wings and then transfer those morsels to their mouths while flying in midair. So eating in flight also allows a bat to top off its tummy in only an hour or 2. So they're very efficient.
Yes. So very, very efficient animals, and very, very helpful for us. We don't think about bats too much, probably, mostly because they are nocturnal, right? So we don't see them a whole lot. Usually by the time they're coming out, we're getting ready for bed.
Right, but also on hot summer nights, we see and feel a lot of mosquitoes.
Exactly.
So thank you, bats.
So thank you, bats. Yeah, bats can eat. It's estimated that an average bat will eat about half of its body weight in insects each night, which is kind of crazy. I mean, they're not very big animals, but still, we're
not a tiny
right.
bugs.
We're talking about half of your body weight. Doesn't matter how big you are.
Right, that's amazing.
And if that bat is pregnant or nursing, she'll actually eat up to 100% of her body weight each night in insects.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, and well, here's some more fun facts. To find food in the dark, bats emit sounds and listen as they echo off of nearby insects. It's called echolocation. It's similar to if you look at a submarine in the water and how they send out those signals, but bats do that in the air through echolocation. Some moths have a sort of invisibility cloak, like a stealth bomber, where they have sound muffling fur on their wings, and that helps them hide from that echolocation sound. So stealth moths.
Right. So we were, talking about how efficient they are, and call back to our whippoorwill here. Here's another nocturnal animal that is not necessarily hunting with their sight, they're using this kind of special ability of echolocation, and they're so good at it that some of these moths have kind of adapted to have a special protection against them. So if you look at a lot of nocturnal moths, you'll notice that they're kind of hairy or furry.
Yeah, and with soft edges on the wings.
Yes,
that muffles the sound. Fascinating.
That is all to help protect them from bats.
Okay, and to be clear here, so bats use echolocation to find insects in the dark, whereas whippoorwills use their sight. So two different predators using two different senses to capture similar prey.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And little brown bats, they're everywhere in the state?
Yeah, they can be found across the state, although they're not considered common in any one place anymore. Little brown bats they're a small kind of mouse sized, if you were going to relate it to another animal, about the size of a mouse, brown colored fur bat, obviously. But they actually are one of our species of conservation concern, in the little brown bat in particular. Although, there's still a good number across the state, bats in general are just seeing a decline. So that's something that we're kind of keeping an eye on.
Okay.
In Missouri, we have about 14 species of bats, including the little brown bat. And I always like to mention when we talk about bats, all bats in Missouri are insectivores. So meaning they only eat insects. So we don't have any bats here that are going to, suck your blood or anything like that.
So help to clarify, folks. There is actually the vampire bat, which is more native to Central and South America. Yeah. And they do drink blood, but we don't have those, so we don't have to worry.
We do not. Yeah. All our bats eat insects.
And also other bats, fruit bats in tropical areas, are huge, like the size of a small dog, and have a wingspan of about 3 feet, and they primarily eat ripe fruit.
Exactly.
But again, not in Missouri.
We don't have those either.
Right. So we say thank you, bats, for eating the mosquitoes on these summer nights. So as we talk about odd bugs and bugs that bats eat, but maybe only occasional here, it's the cicada. So as we see these illustrations, we have two types of cicadas here in Missouri. The periodical cicada, they live underground for most of their lives, and then they crawl to the surface in literally overwhelming numbers it could be the millions, every 13 or 17 years. So they're living underground for over a decade. And then the annual cicadas, they live underground, but really briefly because they evolve and come to the surface every summer. So tell us more about the cicadas.
Yeah, so we couldn't have a strange but true and not talk about cicadas because they're just strange animals, strange insects, and they are the sound of summer. So we had to include them. But as you mentioned in that fact, not everyone knows that there's actually two different types of cicadas. So our annual cicadas that you can see there are cicadas where some amount of those species are emerging every year. So every summer we will have some cicadas, and those are our annual cicadas.
Right, and the key thing you could tell with the annuals is the primarily green body part with kind of the orange and black spots, but they are mostly green, and you could see they're really everywhere in the state, and you might not notice them because they're not in huge numbers.
Yeah, they like you mentioned, some number of them will come out every year, and they usually come out a little bit later in the summer, so that they also get the name Dog Day cicadas. Okay. Because they're out usually late July through August.
So this time of year we could be looking for them.
Absolutely. Yep, we'll see annual cicadas.
But the periodical, we notice those.
But the periodical will be definitely noticeable. They have that red eye and that dark body are characteristic of the
creepy looking
periodical cicada.
Very striking.
A little creepy, yeah.
Right. They're also found throughout the state. And somebody was asking, are they coming soon? When will we see them again?
They're coming soon. They're on their way. Next summer is slated to be another emergence of I can't remember which brood. I don't think I wrote that down. So there are different broods. Oh, brood 19. Next summer will be the emergence of brood 19 in Missouri. So we can expect to see a lot of these periodical cicadas next summer.
Okay, and then they look Very different than the annual. The annual, again, they're larger, primarily green. The periodical are smaller, primarily black with those striking red eyes. And perhaps the biggest difference is the just volume. If you have never experienced the emergence of periodical cicadas, folks, it's phenomenal, where literally in some areas you need to shovel them off the driveway because they are in the millions.
And it's cool to get more into the kind of biological side of it. You know, they do this as a defense against predators. The idea being that if they all come up at once, it will overload predators and birds and other things that eat these insects, so that theoretically some of them could make it to have the next generation.
Right, just overwhelming numbers, that everything that feeds on them, and a lot of stuff feeds on them, from toads we talked about, and bats, and even wild turkey, and we'll be talking about possums and a bunch of other things, but there's so many of them that everything just can't eat them all.
And even humans have been known to have a little cicada snack.
Yes, and I know it's kind of gross to some people, but they are edible technically.
Yeah.
But there's an important kind of a little health warning here.
Yes, it has been said that if you have a shellfish allergy, you should be careful if you're trying cicadas. Supposedly, if you have a shellfish allergy, you could also have a reaction to eating cicadas.
Right. We're not sure why, but you can look up more information online about that. So yeah, the cicadas. And another really strange creature that will eat the cicadas when they're around is the Virginia possum. The O is silent, and the Virginia possums have really a secret superpower. Snake venom doesn't hurt them. So they have a molecule in this mangy marsupial's blood that seems to neutralize venom. So scientists are even studying it if it could be used to treat human snake bite victims. So, I mean, they're often maligned and misunderstood, but talk about the Virginia possum.
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of, some, depending on the picture, they might look cute or they might not, in your personal opinion. But these kind of strange creatures could hold some life-saving medicine inside their veins. Research kind of first went into that possum immunity somewhere back in like the 40s. It kind of stalled out. However, recently, kind of in modern medicine, that's picked back up, and so there's been a lot more research into that immunity. They still aren't really exactly sure what it is about the possum, like what it is in the possum's body, but they believe they have a special peptide, which is like a chain of amino acids that basically binds to the venom, kind of covers up the venom and makes it ineffective.
Yeah, neutralized. That's fascinating. And again, they're found throughout the state. They're often misunderstood, but they're beneficial. They eat a lot of bad insects, especially ticks. They can eat, thousands of ticks a night.
Yeah, they are definitely known.
Maybe not a night, but over the course of a summer.
Yeah, they're known for eating ticks and other insects, eating carrion or roadkill. They can help kind of clean that up sometimes. So they're good to have around, even if they are a little strange.
Yeah, and what makes them even stranger, they are North America's and Missouri's only marsupial. So what's the difference between a mammal and a marsupial?
So,
which is, I think, also a mammal.
Yes, a marsupial is a type of mammal, but marsupials, of course, have that pouch.
Like a kangaroo.
Like a kangaroo, yes. Very classic example. So when the possum has young, they'll be born and they'll only be about like half an inch long. They're totally blind. They obviously still have a lot more developing to do. They will find their way to mom's pouch.
So they literally crawl up the belly.
Yes.
To find the opening into the pouch.
And they'll spend the rest, a couple more months in there developing in her pouch. So that's part of what makes her a marsupial.
Yeah, and strange. And you could see they have a pretty good sized litter there.
Yeah, and actually, while they have baby possums in their pouch, they can actually mate again. So
Fascinating. That's true. Now we know that they're immune to snake venom, so they might not fall prey to snakes, but what else eats them?
well, they are very popular menu item for lots of other predators in the state, like foxes and coyotes, bobcats, even owls have been known to take a possum, and of course, maybe unfortunately, cars. a lot of cars.
That's another roadkill. We'll be getting to the #1 roadkill animal here in Missouri in a little bit, but so we found out that rattlesnakes can't really like harm the possum with the venom, but they're still pretty tough critters. So let's talk about another strange but true reptile here in Missouri, and that's the timber rattlesnake. So, as we can appreciate, to beat summer's heat, where here in Jeff City it's 100 degrees, folks, timber rattlesnakes hunt mostly at night, and then finding dinner in the dark, it's easy for them because, now this is cool, they actually have heat-sensing organs in their snouts, in their faces, and that helps them detect mice and warm-blooded prey because it's almost like infrared. So now if we review, we have the whippoorwill, who hunts at night using its incredible vision. We have the bat that is strange. It hunts at night using echolocation. And now we have the timber rattlesnake, who hunts at night using basically infrared.
Yeah, a lot of cool adaptations for that nocturnal hunting. And I think that it's cool to mention, we think a lot of times about snakes loving the heat, right? Because they're, cold-blooded, and so we might have this image of them basking on a rock. But actually, summers here, like you mentioned in Jeff City, where it's about 100 degrees, that's actually too hot for them.
It's too hot for most of us,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. In the true heat of the summer, you'll find, snakes and other reptiles probably in a shady spot during the day, and then they come out at night when it's a little bit cooler, and they use that pit. It's a heat sensing pit is what we call it, because timber rattlesnakes and all venomous snakes in Missouri belong to the pit viper family. So that meaning they have that heat sensing pit.
You mentioned venomous snakes in Missouri. Quick pop quiz. We have 5 species of venomous snakes.
5 or 6, depending on how you
define
count it. One of those snakes, the Eastern Massasauga, which is a type of rattlesnake, is considered extirpated, meaning we haven't seen it here for a very long time. So we think that it's no longer around.
Right, but technically, hopefully, there are some surviving, even though we don't know.
Somewhere.
So that's the Massasauga?
Yes, that's the Eastern Massasauga. We also have the Prairie Massasauga, which is listed as a state endangered species. And then the Western Pygmy Rattlesnake and the Northern Cottonmouth, which those two are found in the southern part of Missouri. So I always tell people when they, are maybe a little bit worried about venomous snakes, the two you really have to watch out for are timber rattlesnakes and our cottonmouths. Or sorry, that's not true. Our timber rattlesnakes and our copperheads, which can both be found statewide.
Right.
Otherwise, depending on
cottonmouth is mostly the southern part of the snake. It's mostly around water areas and things like that.
Right.
So
Otherwise.
Right. And if folks, again, if you want to learn more about this, visit us online at mdc.mo.gov and search field guide. And there's a lot more information in there. So also the timber rattlesnake, I mean, it's not an old wives' tale. So they add a new section to their rattle each time it sheds. And the rattle is made up of what? Keratin, which is the stuff that our fingernails are made up of.
Yeah. So it's not a myth that they add a section to the rattle when they shed. However, it is not true that you could tell the age of that snake.
Because they shed not.
Because they will shed more than once a year. Usually, on average, a mature wild snake will shed 3 to 6 times a year. However, that's pretty dependent on environment, climate, what they're eating. So they're not all snakes are going to be shedding at the same interval. So all that rattle will really tell us is how many times that snake has shed.
Right. Okay. And again, it's the largest of the venomous snakes in Missouri.
Yes, yep. Our timber rattlesnake is definitely the largest. And like we mentioned, between the timber rattlesnake and the copperhead, those are the two that we can really find statewide. Otherwise, it's a little bit dependent on where you are in the state, what other venomous snakes you'd have to watch out for.
Right, and here's some more pictures of them, and we could see how incredibly well camouflaged they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So again, folks, advice if you're trekking through the woods and all of that, they want to avoid you just as much as we want to avoid them. So, they will feel your footsteps. They won't really hear you whistling or with a bell on, but they will feel your heavy footsteps and try to get out of your way. Right? So we have the timber rattlesnake. And again, if you have questions, folks, please share them through the chat box on the right side of your screen. And as we go on, I think we're kind of getting, is this the last animal oddity, and maybe one of the best animal oddities here in Missouri?
Maybe the strangest.
Right, it's the 9-banded armadillo. So, although perfect for protection, a 9-banded armadillo's armor, it's heavy. So how do they cross rivers? How can they swim? Yes, they could do two things. One is they gulp air until their stomachs blow up like balloons, and they kind of float and paddle across. And they can also ford narrow streams by simply exhaling and walking along the bottom like a little submarine tank.
Exactly.
That is fascinating. I think we featured these also in our winter strange but true survival tips. But tell us more about this really odd animal.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, that that heavy armor is not great for swimming. So they can kind of inflate and float across if it's a wider stream, but if it's not too big, they can basically exhale, hold their breath, and hold their breath for up to about 6 minutes.
That's really impressive.
Which, yeah, it is, considering their body size, that's pretty impressive. So they can hold their breath and walk across the bottom. And that is the 9-banded armadillo, which is the only type of armadillo we have here in Missouri.
Right. There are various species throughout the world, much bigger, much smaller, odder, less odd, but here in Missouri, it's only the 9-banded, and that's really why. Why do we call it that?
You can see kind of in that top left picture there that those bands across the middle section of its armor. Those are the 9 bands that it's named for. And although with those bands, it does kind of look like it could, but it cannot roll up into a ball. So our armadillo that we have here in Missouri is not a species that is able to roll up into a ball.
Some armadillos can roll into a tight ball as a defense mechanism, but the 9-banded can't. However, that's still one of its strongest defense mechanisms, because as it tries to curl up a bit, it's hard for most predators to kind of crunch through that, because those plates are made of bone that are, well, they're made of the keratin with a bone base. So it's pretty tough stuff. They're like little tanks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they are. They're very, very tough little armored tanks. But interestingly enough, maybe not the strangest fact, but pretty cool. These armadillos are actually a mammal. And if you were to look closely, you can kind of see on that bottom picture there. And if you were to look really close on their armor, you'd see little hairs all over, and they have on the underside of their armor, on the kind of belly, they're covered in hair. So they're, makes a little bit more sense.
And they give birth to live babies.
They do. They have live babies, and they actually, interestingly enough, they almost always have quadruplets, identical quadruplets.
Identical. So they have 4 identical babies,
yes,
just about always.
Yep.
That's a fun fact to know.
Strange. We ended on the strangest animal.
Right. And originally, as we could see where they're found in the state, they are slowly moving northward. They've not technically always been in Missouri, but we also don't consider them invasive in any way, because they just came here on their own, right? Where'd they come from, and why'd they come here?
Yeah. So they are native to Mexico and kind of the southwestern United States. As the climate has been changing, we've been getting warmer. They can't stand the cold winter. But as temperatures have been rising, they're able to continue northward. And as you mentioned, they have made their way up here on their own. They weren't introduced or anything like that. They've just continued to expand northward and into our state.
Right, and one of the I also know they don't hibernate, so it's literally winter that is keeping them from moving more northward because they don't hibernate. They need to eat. What do they eat?
They eat a lot of like grubs and beetles, things in the soil. They are excellent at digging. They have basically shovels for hands on their
Those
front.
big bad front claws,
Yeah,
right?
that are perfect for digging and kind of plodding around in the soil. So they love to find grubs and beetles and insects that are down in the leaf litter in the soil.
Right, and so fortunately they eat a lot of like pest type insects, but unfortunately if they come into your yard, they're going to dig it up pretty extensively, so they're not a big fan as far as that. And with those big claws, again, is that kind of a defense mechanism for them? What kind of eats them?
Well, a lot of things can try,
Right.
but as you mentioned, with that big armor, it is pretty hard. They're not. A lot of predators would go for probably an easier meal.
Mm-hmm.
Their number one predator, so to
Loosely,
say, is
number one killer.
their number one killer is automobiles.
Right, and tell us more, folks. Is if you've been driving anywhere in most of Missouri, along the side of the road, you are going to see what sometimes we call possum on the half shell, or a dead armadillo. And it's like, why so many dead armadillos on the side of the road?
Well, so one thing that they do eat, we talked a little bit about their insect eating habits, but they also will eat carrion, which is dead stuff. So
like other
roadkill.
roadkill.
Yeah, so they'll be attracted to the smell. They don't have very good eyesight, but they do have pretty good sense of smell. So they'll be attracted to the smell of other roadkill. They'll come to the side of the road to eat that. And then
or the middle of the road.
Or the middle of the road. And because they don't have great eyesight or great hearing, they don't see your car coming until it's right up on them. And another strange defense mechanism they have is to jump straight up in the air.
Like 3 feet.
Yeah, 2 to 3 feet straight up in the air, as kind of a way to startle a predator.
So if a coyote's coming after it and it jumps 3 feet in the air, that'll startle the coyote enough for it to scamper away, because they could also move pretty fast.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so that would kind of startle the coyote, give them a chance to get away. However, that does
work with the car.
not work so well with your car, and a lot of times they end up jumping straight into it. So not a great situation for them.
No. And, so that's why we see so many possum on the half shell here in Missouri. So we have plenty of strange critters here in Missouri, animals and plants. We encourage folks to find out more by using our online field guide, and you could find that at mdc.mo.gov. You could /discover/nature field guide, or just use the search function. This is also, you can do this from your phone. So if you're out in the woods, you can get animal and plant ID right from your phone using our handy online field guide. Pretty cool. That's kind of wrapping it up today for our MDC Wild Webcast on Strange But True. Sarah, thanks again for being here and bringing your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And again, you are the naturalist at Runge Nature Center. So if folks want to learn more about nature, Runge Nature Center and our nature centers all around the state have naturalists to help educate you and answer your questions. They have amazing exhibits and displays of native plants and animals for you to learn more. And they're fun for kids of all ages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And tons of programs. We're, doing public programs all the time on a variety of different topics. So if you're, anywhere near one of our nature centers in the state, definitely check out some of their free programs.
Yeah, our programs are basically all free.
Absolutely.
So, and a nice thing, our nature centers have outdoor trails for you to literally get outside and discover nature. But during these summer sweltering days, they are air conditioned. So
yes.
You could discover nature in cool air conditioned environment at one of our nature centers. To find out where they are, again, we encourage you to visit mdc.mo.gov and search nature centers. And if you liked this webcast and want to share it with some other folks or want to watch our previous wild webcasts, you can also do that online. Go to mdc.mo.gov and simply search Wild Webcast. So that about wraps it up, folks. Sarah, again, thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We encourage you to get outside and discover nature. And on these hot days of summer, maybe do it at a nature center.